Prince William will go above and beyond to control the monarchy's image by stripping non-royal or non-working royals of their titles.
What started as a quiet power shift inside the palace exploded into a moment that shook the royal world. And I could feel it. Every headline was like losing more public trust each time. Everyone sensed that something major and urgent was unfolding. Prince William didn't wait for formality or anyone's approval. He acted fast, took control, and within hours, Queen Camilla's children were reportedly moved out of the palace entirely. This wasn't just breaking tradition, this was power locking into place like never before. What the public brushed off as a tense Christmas misunderstanding was only the surface of something much deeper. The so-called lunch banishment wasn't just awkward family drama, it was the first strike in a carefully planned move that exposed long-hidden issues inside the royal circle. The real story wasn't about personal conflict, it was about wealth.
She becomes my queen consort.
Influence, and a network that had quietly been benefiting for years. So what exactly did William discover that made him act so quickly and decisively? And how far would Camilla go to protect the system she had carefully built behind closed doors? None of this came out in public statements or media leaks. The truth started to surface in a dining room where silence said more than words. Christmas lunch at Sandringham was supposed to be simple and proper. Turkey served on fine plates, pudding waiting to be sliced, and polite chatter filling the air. But that day, the atmosphere shifted. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez laughed easily, talking about estate renovations and exclusive wine cellars, speaking as if royal privileges were just part of everyday life. They laughed like insiders who thought nothing could ever touch them. But William wasn't joining in. He sat still at the head of the table, calm on the outside, but laser-focused underneath. His eyes tracked every glance, every smug comment, every easy assumption of privilege that no longer felt right to him. King Charles looked exhausted, his shoulders weighed down by the strain of the past few months.
Charles said he hoped his experience may give encouragement to others.
The stress written across his face. Camilla's polished smile wavered for just a moment, not long enough for anyone to call it out, but long enough for the shift in energy to be felt. The room was tense, but no one dared to say why. When the main course was cleared, William placed his glass down with a crisp, deliberate clink. Not loud, but sharp enough to freeze the air. That sound wasn't just background noise, it was a signal. In an instant, conversation stopped, and every eye turned toward him. Moments later, the dining room doors opened, and it wasn't for dessert. Security entered with calm precision, faces serious, movements exact, purpose clear. The atmosphere snapped tight. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Forks hovered in the air, and a heavy silence fell as William slowly rose from his seat. Then came the moment no one expected. He placed a blue folder on the table with a soft but powerful thud. Inside that folder weren't rumors or assumptions. It held pages of verified documents that couldn't be ignored. There were detailed audit papers, financial statements, and registration records, all outlining how large sums had quietly moved through hidden accounts over the years.
And I felt, you're losing people every single time you have those headlines. We all get that there's a really big urgent message.
Tom and Laura's faces went pale, like the life had drained right out of them. Tom stumbled over his words, calling the whole thing unfair, his voice breaking as he turned toward Camilla, not out of anger, but pure panic. She didn't move an inch. She couldn't. Her hands gripped her napkin so tight that her knuckles turned white. King Charles kept his eyes on the papers, his face frozen as the numbers told the story for him, louder than any argument could. There was no confusion, no middle ground. Every line matched perfectly. Every total confirmed the truth. Finally, William spoke. Calm, steady, but every word hit with quiet force. He announced that all agreements between the Crown and the front companies were officially ended, effective immediately. Financial authorities would recover the missing funds. Access to royal properties was revoked, and every special privilege tied to those accounts was erased right then and there. There was no debate, no time for excuses. Security moved in composed and professional, escorting Tom and Laura away from the table without delay. This wasn't dramatic, it was decisive. They weren't led through the grand halls or shown any special courtesy. Instead, they were quietly guided through the back corridors, the same paths used by staff and deliveries, out of view, out of position, and stripped of the comfort they once took for granted. Their voices carried for a few seconds, echoing faintly before fading into silence. William stood by the window, his expression unreadable. He knew exactly how strong his actions appeared, and he didn't soften the impact, because that was the message. The time of using royal status for personal benefit had ended right there in front of everyone who thought the system would never change. Yet one question still burned beneath the silence. How could the Prince of Wales, who wasn't even king yet, take action against the Queen's children and, by extension, challenge his own father's stance? The truth was already sealed 2 days before Christmas. Prince William had made a bold decision to protect the image of the monarchy by tightening control and redefining who held royal privileges. Behind closed doors, William had quietly completed a legal transfer of authority. Emergency powers over royal finances and internal oversight were officially placed in his hands, and it was all done by the book. The move was smooth, legitimate, and planned far in advance. Nothing spontaneous about it. Every step was measured, deliberate, and carried out with near-perfect precision. Inside the royal circle, shock spread fast. Camilla and King Charles were left trying to grasp how quickly everything had changed. Staff whispered in corridors, careful to keep their voices low, afraid to be caught speaking about what had just unfolded. Meanwhile, Tom and Laura sat quietly in a standard security vehicle. No royal treatment, no special exit, just a quiet removal from the palace grounds like anyone else being escorted out. No perks, no soft landing, no protection. William knew how the move would look. Some would label it harsh, others might call it cold. But he wasn't driven by emotion, he was enforcing order. Any trace of public duty being used for personal advantage had been shut down completely. And this was only the beginning. Just 48 hours before the removal took place, a meeting happened that would never show up in any official royal records. Inside a secured chamber at St. James Palace, far out of Camilla's reach, Prince William sat face-to-face with the Lord Chief Justice and the Home Secretary. The thick Tudor-era walls blocked any kind of outside interference, making sure nothing leaked from within. The atmosphere was tense, serious. It felt more like a tribunal than a smooth transition of power. The version later shared with the public spoke softly of cooperation, continuity, and temporary adjustments due to the king's health. But behind those closed doors, the reality was much more forceful. William wasn't just managing the system, he was cleaning out what he saw as a growing internal threat. The Regency Act had been put into motion, but William's interpretation pushed its limits beyond anything seen before. The paperwork in that room wasn't for show. These were powerful documents that unlocked full control over royal security, finances, and internal operations, rights normally reserved for the monarch alone. When King Charles signed at exactly 9:47 p.m., his hand unsteady but intentional, the transfer became official and irreversible. By 10:15 p.m., William was already acting. His first calls went straight to the Director General of MI5 and the Keeper of the Privy Purse, summoning them to an emergency midnight meeting at Clarence House. Their roles were suddenly uncertain. Everything they knew was shifting fast. William told them, calmly but firmly, that their departments had been compromised through loyalty networks tied to the Queen's household. Cooperation wasn't optional, it was mandatory. When the Keeper of the Privy Purse tried to lean on royal protocol, William's response was firm and icy. Those same protocols, he said, had allowed large sums of money to disappear without notice, and that era was officially over. By 2 a.m., both key positions had new people in charge. William had quietly spent months preparing for this moment, carefully selecting replacements from beyond the usual royal circle, professionals from financial forensics, intelligence, and high-level auditing, all loyal to principles, not power. These weren't insiders, they were truth seekers brought in to restore order. Then came the reveal of the so-called black box, a highly secured digital archive containing decades of royal records, private communications, and internal data. It was meant to be accessible only to the monarch and their spouse, but over time it had turned into a blind spot that gave room for misuse to thrive unchecked. At exactly 3:30 a.m., William began his first data search. Every contract and payment linked to the Parker Bowles family name. The findings were worse than anyone had imagined. Over the course of 5 years, royal funds had quietly moved through what looked like everyday expenses, maintenance budgets, logistics, event planning, even charitable projects. Each transaction looked harmless on its own, but when pieced together, they formed a clear pattern. Small amounts layering into massive totals, strategically hidden across accounts that escaped normal review. At the center of it all stood Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez, not just casual beneficiaries, but active managers of how the flow worked. They had set up offshore trusts in the Isle of Man, Jersey, and the British Virgin Islands, all tied to a web of shell companies connected to palace contracts. Nothing in their paperwork was accidental. Every invoice had purpose. Every signature was calculated to perfection. Premium food deliveries were billed at triple their actual price, wine listed for thousands per bottle, and floral arrangements charged at amounts that made no sense. Media consulting invoices showed shocking fees, tens of thousands for what appeared to be a few simple messages. Even crisis consultations were billed during months when there was no crisis at all. But the most questionable section came under special event coordination. When investigators cross-checked those files, the results were eye-opening. Many of the events either never took place or were far smaller than the budgets claimed. Over the course of 5 years, roughly $45 million had quietly moved through this shadow network, all under the ardire of normal oversight. Each payment had passed through the Queen's office before final approval, which meant nothing escaped official channels. But it also raised bigger questions. William now fully understood what had been taken and exactly how it happened. What he didn't yet know was whether Camilla had simply overlooked it all, or if she had been directly involved in how the system ran. That answer hinged on one crucial clue: a distinctive purple seal that appeared on key documents during the exact periods when the king's health left him least able to review them personally. If that seal proved intentional, then it wouldn't just decide the future of Camilla's children, it could redefine the entire balance of power inside the monarchy itself. In William's secured underground operations room, a team of forensic accountants worked non-stop. No breaks, no distractions, just total focus. They'd been brought in from top-level financial intelligence units and major anti-fraud agencies, trained to trace money trails with precision and patience. Inside that room, there were no phones, no internet access, and no outside contact. Only files, records, and cold, hard data leading to the truth. Then one analyst spotted something unusual, a pattern buried deep in the archives. It involved long-standing special fund withdrawals that went back generations, all controlled by a dual signature rule requiring approval from both the monarch and the keeper of the privy purse. Over 5 years, they uncovered 237 such transactions, totaling a massive £87 million. Every single signature and every handwritten mark became a critical piece of evidence in this quiet internal investigation. William's team decided to analyze King Charles's signatures using high-level verification verification software, comparing each one against verified examples from different years of his reign. Normally, an authentic royal signature would show around 95 to 98% consistency, flawless in style and precision. But what they found shocked everyone. The biggest authorizations, ranging from £500,000 to £3 million, only scored between 45 and 70%. These weren't simply rushed or uneven signatures. They looked like they'd been made by someone who was exhausted, unsteady, or heavily impaired at the time of signing. When the team cross-checked the dates of those documents against the king's official medical schedule, the picture grew unmistakably clear. The signatures had been approved just when his health made it unlikely he could review or sign anything properly. Every major suspicious transaction lined up with the king's most fragile health moments, during treatments, recovery periods, and times when strong medication affected his focus and alertness. Someone had taken advantage of his condition with chilling precision. As the evidence appeared on screen, William sat in silence, what his analysts later described as a cold, controlled fury. Each signature was matched against the king's medical reports, revealing a clear and disturbing pattern. Approvals signed exactly when he was least capable of reviewing complex documents. But the manipulation ran even deeper. It was a calculated tactic known as the sandwiching technique. High-value authorizations were hidden among stacks of harmless paperwork, ceremonial notes, diplomatic correspondence, military acknowledgments, and charity approvals. On the surface, everything looked ordinary, but in between those routine pages were the documents that mattered most, the ones transferring serious funds. To make things worse, staff close to Camilla's office reportedly emphasized urgency, often saying things like, "We really must have these signed today, sir. Just a few quick ones so you can rest." Exhausted and trusting, the king would sign page after page, spending only seconds on each, never realizing what was mixed in between. His trust had been turned into a tool for personal advantage. The final undeniable piece of proof came from one symbol, the distinctive purple seal. All special fund requests had first passed through Camilla's office, where her personal seal was placed before anything reached the king. When investigators compared the documents, they found that beneath each unsteady royal signature sat that same purple mark, confirmation that the papers had been deliberately pre-cleared before being sent to him. Someone had knowingly signed off on these unlawful extractions, and the consequences were staggering. This wasn't just a case of missing funds, it was something far more personal and disturbing. The king's fragile health had been taken advantage of. His trust turned into an opportunity for others to profit. The money quietly taken from royal accounts wasn't random. It was the result of a carefully planned operation, orchestrated by someone who was supposed to be one of his closest allies. William now possessed solid digital proof, files that clearly exposed a sophisticated, organized financial scheme. But even with all that, digital records alone couldn't stand up in court or any official inquiry. What he needed were the originals, the signed documents with King Charles's handwriting, the papers stamped with Camilla's distinctive purple seal, and internal communications confirming that the approvals were intentional. However, the royal archives were massive, a maze of classified storage and locked rooms. If Camilla even suspected that William's investigation was closing in, she could easily have the files removed or accidentally lost. All it would take was a so-called plumbing issue, a minor fire in a records room, or a mislabeled box, and everything could disappear overnight. William couldn't afford a single mistake, so he created a strategy: patient, methodical, and psychologically brilliant. Through trusted channels, he allowed just enough information about the financial probe to leak, ensuring it reached Camilla's inner circle. He wanted her to believe the walls were closing in, to feel the pressure and act out of fear. Once she moved to protect herself, his team would have exactly what they needed: undeniable proof. That's when Margaret Thornton entered the picture, a polite and loyal administrative assistant from the Privy Purse Office. She had been personally recommended by Camilla herself, seen as trustworthy but unsuspecting, the perfect person to unknowingly trigger the next move in William's carefully designed plan. Margaret truly believed that Camilla was being treated unfairly, and that blind loyalty made her easy to predict. William's team used that to their advantage, setting up a carefully staged conversation between two auditors right where Margaret could overhear them. They spoke about how the money trail had been fully traced and that only the original documents were missing. Margaret took the bait exactly as planned. Within just 6 hours, the information reached Camilla through her remaining network, right as she was calmly having tea at Clarence's house. Sharp and composed as ever, Camilla quickly understood what was happening. She knew that while the digital evidence against her was serious, it could still be debated. But if the physical documents, the ones with the king's delicate signature and her purple seal, were ever found, it would completely destroy her standing. So, she made her move with quiet precision. Retrieving a secure, disposable phone meant only for sensitive situations. She dialed Ali Hassan, her chief security officer for 15 years. Ali wasn't just a protector, he had been her shield through countless controversies, inspecting vehicles, managing private routes, and guarding secrets few even knew existed. His loyalty ran deep, almost unbreakable, but this time, that devotion was about to be tested like never before. Camilla's instructions were clear and direct. Safe number 4 in Archive B. It contains the originals. They must disappear without anyone knowing. Ali immediately understood what she was asking. This wasn't normal security protocol. It was the removal of sensitive material, a serious step that crossed into dangerous territory. At exactly 1:45 a.m., Ali entered Buckingham Palace through a discreet staff entrance, dressed in standard night shift security gear that allowed him to move unnoticed through the dark hallways. The oldest section of the estate, with its twisting corridors and heavy air, guided him toward the archives room, the most hidden part of the entire complex. At exactly 2:03 a.m., he arrived at the reinforced door. The keypad security lock blinked faintly in the dark, but his high-level clearance code unlocked it without resistance. Inside, the lighting was dim and still, long rows of cabinets disappearing into the shadows. Safe number 4 waited against the far wall. Ali activated the cutting device, slowly melting through the internal locking system without a sound. 15 long minutes later, the metal gave way with a faint click. Inside the safe rested a single red portfolio, about 40 pages thick, holding the original special fund authorizations. Each page bore King Charles's genuine signature, paired with Camilla's purple seal. The paperwork tracked vast sums of money, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, all quietly redirected under official-looking approvals. Ali lifted his lighter, ready to burn the files completely. But just as the flame flickered to life, the entire room exploded in white light. Floodlights blazed from hidden corners, and he froze instantly, blinded and exposed. Heavy footsteps thundered in, and a firm voice rang out through the brightness. "Hands on your head, now!" It was Lieutenant Colonel Thompson, head of the Royal Protection Group, leading 5 armed officers. Outnumbered and trapped, Ali didn't resist. He slowly raised his hands, and within seconds, his firearm was taken and his wrists were bound with security ties behind his back. The operation was over, and William's trap had just sprung shut. The red portfolio was secured with extreme care, handled like the priceless evidence it was. Lieutenant Colonel Thompson then stated the charges in a steady, formal tone: attempted destruction of royal property, unauthorized access, and conspiracy to interfere with an official investigation. Ali stayed silent, his face unreadable, relying on the discipline and composure that had defined his entire career. But then Thompson delivered the revelation that changed everything. Ali's secret phone, the one meant to stay completely off the radar, had been under surveillance by GCHQ for 3 straight days. Every call, every instruction, every quiet word exchanged with Camilla had been recorded. In her attempt to erase the trail, Camilla had unknowingly created one that could not be denied. Her own voice was now the proof. Clear, undeniable, and fully documented. Ali's capture ended one operation, but it opened a bigger mystery. Why would the Queen risk her reputation, her security, and decades of loyalty to protect or destroy these records? The answers would come from an interrogation few inside the palace would ever know about. Ali was taken to a secure chamber that wasn't listed anywhere on the official maps. It was stark: a metal table, 3 chairs, silent cameras in every corner, and walls designed to block all sound. Under emergency authority granted through the Official Secrets Act, the entire process was kept outside normal legal channels. There would be no lawyers, no outside witnesses, only 2 figures in the room: Prince William and Lord Justice Peaton, his senior legal advisor. William had insisted on conducting the questioning himself. He didn't just want to know what Ali had done, he wanted to understand why. Why would a decorated officer, one of the most trusted in royal service, risk everything to follow Camilla's command? The interrogation began with a recording. Camilla's voice echoed through the speakers, sharp and unmistakable. Archive B, safe number 4, destroy the documents now. The room fell silent as William watched Ali's expression shift ever so slightly, the first crack in his unwavering calm. Ali stayed composed, his jaw tightening slightly, his breathing measured and calm. The evidence was undeniable. Camilla hadn't given any orders about relocating or safeguarding records. Her only instruction had been clear and final: destroy the documents completely. There was no sign of confusion or misunderstanding. Her sole intent was to erase the proof. William slid a stack of papers across the table, official documents outlining every consequence Ali now faced. The list was devastating: entering restricted areas without clearance, attempting to destroy protected royal property, endangering a historic site, and obstructing an ongoing royal investigation. Some charges even bordered on national security violations. The potential sentence stretched into decades. The tension in the room grew heavier with every word. Then came a single page that stood out: a possible way out. Full cooperation could grant Ali a second chance. Placement under witness protection, reduced sentencing, guaranteed safety for his family, and preservation of his service status. All he had to do was tell the truth. Everything he knew about the conspiracy, the hidden financial networks, and Camilla's involvement. For 6 long hours, silence and questions traded places. Finally, Ali broke through the wall of loyalty that had bound him for years. He confessed that his devotion had been turned against him, used as a tool for someone else's protection. Camilla hadn't asked him to defend anyone in danger. She had asked him to cover up wrongdoing. The realization hit him hard. He hadn't been protecting the crown. He'd been helping to hide deception. Ali's detailed testimony unraveled the entire structure. Camilla's scheme hadn't been a moment of desperation, it was a long-term plan. She had designed something she called the Post-Charles Safety Fund, intended to quietly secure around £100 million of independent assets. Her children served as intermediaries, channeling royal contracts through shell companies that then moved the funds into private trusts under their control. Ali explained everything with precision. How Camilla carefully guided the king into signing approvals under the guise of administrative formality. Camilla had reportedly gained access to the king's private medical schedule by pretending it was needed to coordinate her own engagements. Then, with careful timing, she presented official-looking documents during the exact moments when he was weakest, after treatments or during recovery periods when exhaustion clouded his focus. In those fragile windows, his ability to question or analyze complex paperwork was deeply reduced. What appeared to be harmless authorizations for charitable projects or environmental causes were in reality structured channels redirecting royal funds into her children's private companies. Ali explained that throughout the entire process, Camilla never once showed genuine regret. The only emotion she displayed was fear, not for the king's well-being, but for the chance of being found out. To her, this wasn't emotional betrayal, it was strategy. She treated the misuse of the king's trust like a business plan, taking quiet pride in how smoothly and secretly she had managed each step. As William listened, every muscle in his body tightened. He had suspected financial misconduct for months, maybe years, but hearing how deliberately his father's most vulnerable moments had been used was something entirely different. It wasn't just corruption, it was personal. The depth of the manipulation hit him harder than any political scandal ever could. Ali's words painted a devastating picture. Camilla had turned loyalty, affection, and even illness itself into tools for financial control. The very man who had stood by her for decades, defending her, elevating her, and protecting her from public criticism, had unknowingly been used as a means to an end. By the time Ali finished, the truth was undeniable. The network, the deception, the exploitation, all of it was laid bare. With his testimony, the entire operation was finally exposed for what it truly was, a calculated long-term manipulation that had turned royal trust into personal gain. Every detail had now come to light, from the attempt to destroy key records to the hidden financial operations, from falsified authorizations to the calculated use of the king's weakest moments. Yet even with all the evidence laid bare, one impossible challenge still stood ahead. William now faced the most painful duty of his life: telling his father. He would have to reveal that the woman who had sat beside the king through his hardest days, who had been seen as his comfort and support, was the very person behind the deception that had torn the monarchy apart. As William walked toward his father's private quarters, the briefcase in his hand felt heavier with each step, not just with papers and files, but with the unbearable weight of what they represented. Inside were recordings, signed documents, and a detailed timeline that mapped every betrayal, proof that loyalty had been replaced by manipulation. The scheme had been dismantled, the truth uncovered, but the question that lingered in William's mind was cruelly simple. How could he tell a sick and aging king that the woman he loved most had been the one working against him all along? And once the words were spoken, what would be left of the man or the kingdom he had built? Outside, the morning sky reflected the mood perfectly. Gray, heavy, and still. Low clouds hung over the palace grounds like a curtain before a storm. William drove toward the estate with slow, deliberate focus, ignoring royal protocol and security formality. This wasn't a meeting for the press or the advisors. It was personal. This wasn't a royal meeting or a formal debrief. It was a reckoning between a father and son, a confrontation over a betrayal so deep it could shake both the monarchy and the family at its core. William arrived right at 9 o'clock, holding only a leather briefcase that felt far heavier than it looked. Inside were the items that would redefine everything: papers, recordings, charts, and audits that together carried the full weight of truth. King Charles sat in his private study, surrounded by reminders of a lifetime spent in duty and service. Photographs from state visits lined the walls, medals and honors gleamed softly from their cases, and small tokens from charitable work filled the shelves. But the illness had clearly taken its toll. His once strong presence now seemed delicate, his skin pale and thin, his movements slow but steady. The quiet dignity that had always defined him seemed fragile, as though even the air around him might break it. Camilla sat nearby, a book open in her lap, projecting the image of calm loyalty. But the second she saw William standing in the doorway, her composure cracked. Her fingers stiffened around the edges of the book, and for a fleeting moment, the mask slipped. She knew instantly that this wasn't a conversation she could steer or soften. William's face was firm, unreadable, but his eyes carried the gravity of what was coming. This wasn't the hesitant son of old. This was a man who had seen too much to stay silent. Without saying a word, he placed the briefcase on the table, unlatched it, and began to take out the documents one by one in careful sequence. First came the financial audits, pages covered with numbers, charts, and flow diagrams. They mapped the movement of royal funds through a complex network of shell companies, tracing every step until the trail reached the Parker Bowles family trusts. Next, William laid out the original special fund authorizations, each one carrying the king's genuine signature beside Camilla's distinct purple seal. He began to explain, point by point, just how vast the deception had been. Over the course of 5 years, approximately £87 million had quietly vanished from royal accounts through falsified invoices and staged contracts. The final recipients of these transfers were Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez, who had hidden their control behind an intricate maze of offshore companies built to conceal responsibility. William carefully handed his father one document in particular, a $2.8 million emergency conservation payment. On paper, it looked legitimate. In reality, the money had been rerouted into a shell company in Jersey and later absorbed into a private family trust. As Charles looked down at the papers, his hands began to shake slightly. He struggled to remember ever approving such payments, his mind searching for moments that matched the signatures before him. The man he believed himself to be, careful, dutiful, honorable, was at odds with what he was seeing on the page. William continued without hesitation, placing each authorization alongside corresponding medical records. The evidence made one pattern painfully clear. His father signed all 43 high-value approvals during times when he was heavily medicated, recovering from treatment, or under significant mental strain. The timing wasn't coincidence. It was strategic. Someone knew exactly when his guard would be down. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. How could a son even express this kind of betrayal to his father? William's voice stayed steady as he turned the next page, pointing to the signature mark that tied it all together. The purple seal, Camilla's personal insignia. This wasn't an administrative error, he said quietly. It was intentional. Each fraudulent authorization bore her direct approval, her mark, her knowledge, her control. The realization spread across Charles's face like a slow, breaking tide. The woman he had stood by through decades of criticism, whom he had defended before the world and raised to the highest station beside him, had used his trust to secure wealth for her children. The final and most damning piece of evidence came in the form of an audio recording, a statement from Ali Hassan, Camilla's longtime head of security. In the recording, Ali described with striking precision how Camilla gained access to King Charles's private medical schedule, timed her document signings around his weakest moments, and carefully framed each request to appeal to his generosity and trust. She even gave the scheme a name, her accumulation strategy, also known as the Post-Charles Safety Fund, a plan designed to quietly build at least £100 million in personal, independent assets. Charles listened in silence, his face drained of color, his hands trembling slightly against the armrests of his chair. As the recording played on, the question that had haunted much of his adult life surfaced again. Why had he given her everything? Love, loyalty, protection, the crown's legitimacy, all entrusted to her, only for it to be turned against him. His eyes welled up, not from fury, but from deep heartbreak. It was the kind of pain that came not from loss of wealth or power, but from realizing that trust itself had been used as a weapon. His final years, he now saw, had been lived beneath a carefully built illusion. Every reassurance, every tender gesture had been part of a narrative designed to conceal something darker. When Camilla finally tried to speak, her voice cracked under the weight of the proof stacked before her. Her tears did come, but they were not born of regret. They were driven by fear. Fear of losing the influence, the comfort, and the image she had worked decades to protect. William stood across the room, watching her closely, his expression somewhere between pity and resolve. He wasn't there to humiliate her, only to expose the truth. The empire she had built on charm and manipulation was collapsing piece by piece. In desperation, Camilla attempted to twist the story, claiming that William's loyalty to Diana's memory had made him biased and driven her into self-protection. In the end, Camilla's greatest fear, losing her wealth and control, had cost her something far more valuable: the trust of King Charles himself. As the silence stretched through the study, Charles withdrew into deep thought, his expression distant and wounded. The realization of how deeply he had been misled was almost too heavy to bear. How many times had she placed papers before him, disguising them as acts of care? How many times had he trusted her without hesitation, believing her intentions were kind, only to find out they were driven by ambition and greed? Every memory of affection now felt poisoned, every shared moment recast as part of a carefully managed illusion. What had once been love now seemed like manipulation wearing the mask of loyalty. William, standing only a few feet away, felt his own heart strain under the weight of the moment. Finally, he spoke, softly but firmly, asking the question that would decide everything. Did his father want justice to move forward, or should the truth remain hidden to protect the crown from scandal? Charles hesitated for only a moment before nodding, slow, deliberate, but absolute. That small gesture was his final act of strength. It was permission and a burden no father should ever have to give a son, to tear down the illusion that had defined his final years. The evidence was complete. Every file, every bank record, every piece of communication had been verified and stored. The conspiracy, intricate and carefully concealed for years, now lay fully exposed under William's hand. Yet even as he closed the briefcase, one haunting question refused to fade. What does justice look like when the wrongdoer is a queen and the victim is a dying king? And deeper still, how does a system built to protect the powerful confront betrayal that comes from within? The royal walls had witnessed history before, but never like this. The truth had finally broken through the crown's silence. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more shocking royal revelations and behind-the-scenes untold truths. Your support helps bring more stories like this to light.